Dear Dharma friends and all practitioners, today is the first day of the retreat in June 2025. It's the 7th of June is the first day, and the 13th of June will be the last day, and the 14th we will have a ceremony for those who pass away in the temple. So in the retreat, during the times of practicing, we need to follow the right instructions and practice on the right path. It's important for new practitioners and old practitioners to practice anything that you feel like you know about the Patriot Zens, or anything you feel like you achieve. You need to put them down and just focus on the practice. Just like the old bottles with containing something inside, you pull them out to put a new thing in. It doesn't mean that we throwing away something and getting something new. It just means that we need to focus on the practice. We use the questions to raise the doubt, and we relied on the questions to raise the doubt. The doubt will be the main factor to sweep away all of those thinking in our mind. When we do practicing anything that we knew from outside, when we go into the temple, the monastery during the retreat, we need to throw away all of those knowledge, all of those learning that we had before. Even the containers, your own stomach, your own mind, you have to put them down and do the practice only. So when you do the practice, which means you take the times to cultivate your own mind, just like normally you always running outside and follow anything that you see or any thinking in your mind. Like a person who doing the business, you invest in the bank or any places or companies. So now we doing the practice, we withdraw everything. We withdraw from all of those investments and just focus on the practice. Just because we have been in this circle of birth and death for several lives due to the thinking. Now we need to do the practice to stay away from those thinking. And that is just an example. So that is the withdrawal from all of those thinking, all those ignorance, and our practice going against awe of those normal daily living and just focus on the cultivation of the mind. If we want to stay away from the stress, the pressure in the life, or of those actions in life, we need to do the practice to go back to our quiet mind. However, it's just like you go in from one action mind to a quiet mind. That is still the dualistic aspects of the mind. However, when we practicing the Patriot Zens, we need to put out everything that we learned before and get familiar with the new way of practice. And that is the main purpose of doing the retreat. So in the Patriot Zen, we're using the questions, the unanswered questions, to raise the doubt. The doubt is a cause, and the enlightenment is the effect. Without a doubt, you won't be able to see or realize your own Buddha nature. In other methods, there's always have a objective, subjective, and objective aspect involvement. However, in the Patriot Zens, we're using the not knowing aspect of the mind to practice. We don't achieve anything. Doesn't mean that we don't achieve anything, but anything that we feel like we achieve, we put them down by doing a practice. So the main point here is to practice, to stay away from all of those thinking in the mind. And the doubt will be the one that helping us to practice and forget all about the words and explanations. And the doubt will help us to sweep up all of those elusive thinking in the mind, all of those ignorance, and just go back to our own mind. When we start the practice, it doesn't mean that we can get our goal right away. We need to do the practice when we have the right practice, when we have the right directions. We just keep on practicing. We rooted our practice based on the circle of birth and death. And we trade in everything, no matter how difficult that is. We still use the directions to practice and keep our strong mindset in order to practice continuously and diligently. So with our new practitioners and old practitioners, I want to remind everybody that the two requirements to practice Patriot Zen: first, believe in your own Buddha nature. Second, start your practice when you believe in your own Buddha nature, which means you must detach yourself from anything going on in your mind. You have to enter the stream of practicing, and the belief and practice should go simultaneously. You don't just attach yourself to the knowledge, the understanding, but you use those understanding and knowledge to apply it in your practice. When you attach yourself to the knowledge or the understanding, then you have a tendency to run after and attach yourself to those that that your mind created. So when you believe in your own Buddha nature, but you don't practice properly, you might make a mistake. It's not only the understanding or the knowledge, but the applications of what you understanding will give you the experience in the practice. In the 10 reminders of practicing the patriot Zens, we need to be careful in practicing. We don't show off and show off our practice, but we do the practice truly. Our Buddha nature has no dualism. We relied or take refuge in the three jewels of Buddhism and practice. When we practicing, we also learn and ask questions from our experienced ones, so we can realize our own mistake and detach ourselves from those mistakes and continue to practice on the right path. So for the patriot Zens, we need to ask questions and raising doubts. During the day, any activities, we doing the same thing, asking questions and raising doubt. The doubt is a not knowing aspects of the mind. We're using that. You're using the questions with no answer to create or to raise that doubt, and that doubt will detach ourselves from anything going on in the mind. In normal life, usually the normal doubt is always having the questions, and always have the answer for the questions that you doubt. And usually when we have the answer, we attach ourselves to that answer. It's just like when you saw the dark cloud in the sky, you predict that the rain is coming. When you see the ground was wet and you know that there was a rain in the previous night. So those thinking in the mind is always there. Like kids stay close to his or her mom, is always familiar with those smells of the mom, or that anything from moms are very familiar to him. he doesn't know those are the habits that he has for several lives. So in order for the new practitioner to go back to the stillness of the mind or the emptiness of the mind, we need to practice. However, the knowing mind is always there to interfere with your practice by trying to answer the questions, even though the questions have no answer. So you try to explain the questions when it have no way to explain. And that is a wrong way to practice. When you're still running after your thinking, when you're still running after the elusive thinking in the mind, that means you're running after the bones, like a patriarch said, a dog running after the bones, and you don't know your own Buddha nature. In 49 years of Dharma talk, the Buddha, at the end of his life, he said that they have no Dharma talk at all. If anyone said that the Buddha had given many Dharma talk, they are insulting the Buddha. Just because we have a really thick ignorance in this life, when we're listening to the true Dharma talk, we won't be able to follow the meanings of those Dharma talk. That's why in the Linsen retreat, the Buddha picked up a lotus flower. The rest of the monasteries people, they don't understand. However, Mahakayip was the one that smiling, and that's why the Buddha knew that Mahakayip had reached the enlightenment, and he said that he gonna have the special methods without using the words or explanations, only focus on the practice, and he ordained that practice to Mahakayip. So when we're doing the patriarch Zens, we need to plant a seed of liberations of our mind from all the thinkings, and our practice will lead you toward the goal of enlightenment. So the teaching of the patriarch Zens, using the practice to reach a goal without using the words or explanations, it doesn't mean that we destroy the words or explanations, but we don't attach ourselves to those by practicing. So nowadays we have a chance, a good chance, to meet the patriarch Zens. Today is the first day of the retreat in June 2025. I want to introduce the patriarch Zens in the first day of the retreat, so we can understand the way of practice, the proper way of practice. the right directions so we can practice. We have new and old practitioners in this retreat, in this monastery, so we will do the practice together. The old practitioners will help the new practitioners in practice. We need to do the practice together without any discriminations of new or old. We consider everybody like a family and doing the practice normally. And we use the love and kindness in the time of practice and helping each other in practice. If you have any questions or want to share your experience in practice, go ahead and speak up. Kim In, go ahead.
Dạ, Nam mô Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Con kính thưa quý thầy, quý sư cô cùng thiền đường đại chúng. Thưa thầy,
I heard your Dharma talk several times about practicing in the monastery with our Dharma friends. We need to rely on our Dharma friends, our monastery, in order to be progressing in our practice. So yesterday, when I heard from your Dharma talk that when we doing the practicing in the monastery, even when you sleep in the monastery, it's better than doing the practicing at home or somewhere else. So could you remind us of the rules or the precepts in the monastery, how they are helping us in our practice? So in the monastery, in the temple, we always have the precepts, the rules that will prevent us from all those normal daily habits, and these precepts helping us in practicing. That's why the patriarchs, the experienced ones, always remind everybody to do the practice in the monastery. Normally, living in a normal life, people, they just have the habit when they stay at home, even they want to do the practice. However, because of the habit of laziness, they didn't want to do the practice. However, in the monastery, we have the schedule of doing things, so we have to follow that schedule and always follow the precepts in a monastery. Outside, we always running after the thinking in the mind and do whatever that the mind telling you to do. However, in the monastery, you won't be able to do so. You must follow the schedule. When you live in a normal life, you always let those habits or activities from outside interfere with your practice. But if you in the monastery, you must follow the schedules and the precepts and do the practice only. When we do the practice, we pay respect to our Buddha, our master, who have taught these methods of practicing to us. It doesn't mean that you need to stay in a monastery. The more you stay, the more you get better. You must performing the practice and follow the schedule and respect the precepts in order to get better and progress in your practice. Some people thought that when you stay in a monastery, your practice will get better. That is not, because sometimes they stayed in a monastery and they thought that the Buddha is his or her relative, and they take advantage on that. They don't do the practice, then they won't be able to walk toward the goal. If we stay in the monastery, we still running after those desires or anything that you like living on the outside world, then you won't be able to get progress in your practice. The monastery, the temple, is the standard for people to come and practice. The precepts will be the aids for us to practice even more, because they're helping us to practice on the right track. So when we have the retreat like this, it's like a time that we do in the practice in order to filter out those who ready to reach their goal. So that's why Ba Chư Zen Master have created the rules or the precepts in the monastery of meditations for everybody to follow. When you come to the monastery, it's just like you go into the examinations. When you come to the examinations, you must pass your exam. So in the monastery, we do the examinations to be the candidate to become the future Buddha. So we need to practice diligently and walk toward our goal until we get enlightenment. So as a practitioners and practicing in the monastery and following the precepts, those are very convenient for us to practice. We need to take advantage on that to practice. Is that understandable? Yes. Thank you for your words.